Hello and welcome. I'm Ankit and you're watching the Daily News Simplified, which is the what, why, and how of important news articles. Now, before moving forward, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe our YouTube channel for day to day daily current affairs updates. Now, as you can see in the slide, we have 7 important articles. So, we'll start right away with the first article of the day, which appeared in the Business Line newspaper. Now, if you see closely, this article highlights that India has added 11.3 gigawatt of coal-based thermal power plant capacity. Now, this addition is the highest in the last 7 years, that is since 2016. Further, a related article also appeared in the Indian Express newspaper, which has highlighted that the global emphasis on thermal power based generation using coal particularly is a cause of environmental pollution and global warming. And in this regard, India has also promised to achieve its net zero emissions by the year 2017, which naturally means scaling down or in a way phasing down the use of coal-based thermal power production. Now, this particular news article, they are important from GS paper 3 perspective because the syllabus itself, it highlights infrastructure with particular emphasis on the energy sector. Alternatively, the questions related to this topic has been asked quite frequently in the UPSC mains. Case in point being this the question of the year 2022, where you can see the question asked whether India will be able to meet its 50% of target to generate energy from renewable energy by the year 2030. So let us discuss this important article because coal is an integral part of our day-to-day life. As coal, it is used to power our homes and it also provides us with warmth in the months of winters. Further, coal has been a central theme of the blockbuster movie that was Gangs of Wasepur because the story was based in a suburb of the area Dhanbad, which is one of the most important coal producing areas in the country. Now, in terms of installed capacity of generating power in India, coal constitutes about 50% of total power generation capacity. Whereas in terms of power generation is concerned, coal accounts for more than 70% of power generated in the country. So you can understand the use of coal, especially in thermal based power plants, it is important for India's energy security. But there is one downside to this coal based power production. That is, it creates environmental pollution in the atmosphere and it also emits greenhouse gases, which has a significant global warming potential. So naturally, the answer to reduce environmental pollution and reduction of emission of greenhouse gases will be to scale down or phase down the use of coal power. But India has been unable to do so in the short term period because coal has important characteristic which makes it important for energy generation as well as the energy security aspects of the country. First of all, India is a developing country. So, developing country needs huge amount of energy for its industrial sector, for its service sector, as well as to power the homes of its increasingly large population. Now, in terms of per capita electricity consumption, India has about 1/3 of global average energy consumption. So naturally, this has to be increased in order to meet the growing aspirations of a developing country like India. So that's why India is witnessing a huge electricity demand. That's why India has been continuously using coal to meet this increasing energy demand in the country. Further, the natural alternatives to coal-based power generation is that of wind power as well as solar power. But the issue with these two kind of renewable energy resources is that they're intermittent in nature. Now, what is intermittency? Now, you can understand the wind power generation as well as solar power generation, they are not equal during the entire day period. Because solar, as you can understand, the power generation is only available during the daytime. On the other hand, wind energy they can only be generated when the wind speed is above a certain threshold. So the days when the wind speed is not that high, or the rainy days as well as winter periods, they lead to less amount of wind and solar energy generation. So to meet the gap of power generation through these renewable energy, we need a continuous or a base source of energy which is provided by the coal based power plants. So this intermittency issues, particularly with respect to wind sector as well as solar sector, it can be dealt by coal-based thermal power plants, which makes coal crucial for India's energy requirements. Now also, India is world's fifth largest reserves of coal, and it is the world's second largest producer of coal. So, as India is a significant producer of coal, so utilizing coal for its power generation is a natural alternative. Whereas on the other hand, the more cleaner source of thermal power generation, that is power generation through natural gas, it is a costly affair because India is not self-sufficient in natural gas. Thereby, to import natural gas, it requires large amount of dollars, and it also does not make geopolitical sense. So it makes both economic and geostrategic sense to utilize domestic coal rather than opting for costly import alternatives such as natural gas. That's why utilization of domestic coal is a priority for any developing economy. That's why coal is being continuously used in India. Further, there are many heavy industries such as steel sector, aluminium industries, as well as cement producing companies which require huge amount of coal to power their blast furnaces. So naturally, coal is the cheapest option as well as easily available options. On the other hand, renewable sources such as green hydrogen, they are currently quite expensive. That's why it does not make economic sense for these heavy industries to opt for cleaner sources. That's why they continuously use coal for their energy based requirements. Also, coal sector, not just mining, but also transportation as well as use case industries such as steel and aluminium. These industries in total, they employ almost 13 million people. That's why moving away from coal, it will jeopardize the economic security of these 13 million people. Thereby, it makes socio-economic sense to continue using coal. Further, coal transportation, it accounts for about 43% of railways freight revenue. Now, this significant source of freight revenue, which provides profit to railways, it is used to cross subsidize the passenger fares. So that's why use of coal, it's not just important for railways balance sheet, but it is also important to provide cheaper transportation to India's public in nature. That's why, because of all these six factors that I've enumerated right now, it makes a perfect sense to use coal for a short term period. But as coal is polluting in nature, it also makes sense to reduce the amount of pollution through these coal based thermal power plants. So, in this regard, I have four suggestions, which was given by a report conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now, this highlights four measures which can be utilized to reduce the emissions by the coal based thermal power plants. The first suggestion in this regard is to reduce the inefficiencies that are there in the thermal power plants. Now, in this regard, Ministry of Power, it came up with a national mission of enhanced energy efficiency. Now, in this particular scheme, the government, it had retired the previously inefficient coal power plants as much as 177 units they were retired, which was responsible for about 15 gigawatts of power generation. Now, further modernization and renovation of old power plants, they were also conducted in order to reduce the inefficiencies of older plants. Further, in medium term and long term period, coal can be utilized only for meeting the flexible operations to meet increasing energy demands. Because currently, coal is utilized for base load of power generation. But you need to change this in order to reduce the total emission of the energy sector. So the ideal way forward will be to make coal, which is necessary only to meet the increasing demands of energy, where the base load in near future can be provided by solar power sector as well as wind energy. Further, as we all know, coal or burning of coal, it emits many harmful greenhouse gases, one of which is sulfur dioxide, which may lead to acid rain and other polluting events. So we need to reduce the amount of sulfur dioxide emissions from these coal-based power plants. So in this regard, flue gas desulfurization, which was taken recently, should be scaled up in a gradual manner. Because originally it was envisaged that power plants having 168 gigawatt capacity will be installed with units that will help flue gas desulfurization. But originally, up till 2021, only about 4 gigawatt plants were installed with this flue gas desulfurization units. So we need to scale up this in order to reduce the sulfur dioxide pollution. Further, the carbon which is emitted, or carbon dioxide which is emitted from burning of coals, it can be captured and utilized using the method called carbon capture and utilization storage, because you have to store the emitted carbon dioxide in order to reduce the global warming in our Indian country. Further, as I've already highlighted, India has committed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by the year 2070. So installing this capacity will help India achieve this target in a more quicker manner. So this was all for today's discussion on coal-based power generation in our country. And with this, we move to the second article on the day, which appeared in both the Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express newspaper. Now, these two articles, they highlight a study which was conducted by Land and Conflict Watch, which is a data research organization based in New Delhi. Now, this study, it highlighted that as much as 153 Lok Sabha seat, in these seats, forest rights and their implementation, they are a major political issue. Now, politics is out of UPSC syllabus, but implementation of important laws which are constituted for protection of vulnerable sections such as forest dwelling scheduled rights, scheduled tribes, these are important from GS paper 2 perspective. Further, a question on a similar topic, that was Right of Persons with Disability Act, and another vulnerable section, was asked by UPSC in the mains of the year 2017. So you can understand questions, especially with respect to Forest Rights Act of the year 2006, it is important from mains point of view. Now, this piece of legislation, that is Forest Rights Act, it is implemented in forest areas of the country. However, this news article, it highlights that there are various contentions in the affected community that are forest dwelling scheduled tribes. Now, most important grievance among them is the demand for legal recognition of their land rights as well as protection or access to common land resources. Now, in this context, let us discuss the Forest Rights Act of the year 2006. Now, this piece of legislation, it recognizes and vests rights to forest dwelling scheduled tribes as well as other traditional forest dwellers. Now, this legislation, it provides these communities with not just ecological rights of protecting their forest, but also livelihood rights, as they'll have access to forest resources, as well as rights to food security. As these communities, they are dependent on forests and their resources to meet their livelihood needs as well as food and security needs. Further, the ecological maintenance of these forest areas, they are also utmost importance for these particular communities. So this piece of legislation, it grants these communities the rights to preserve the forest resources as well as ensure their conservation and provide for their sustainable use. Now, this legislation, it provides four kind of rights to forest dwelling communities. The most important among this is it grants the forest dwelling communities with title rights. As the lands that these communities have been utilizing for generation, this particular legislation, it provides them with ownership rights of up to 4 hectares of land. Further, these forest communities, they also have use rights for forest resources, as they'll have to extract minor forest produce, have access to grazing areas, as well as pastoral routes for their day-to-day use. In addition, this legislation, it provides with them relief and development rights, that in case of forceful eviction from their traditional lands, these communities, they have a right to seek rehabilitation from the government. Further, these communities, they are also vested with forest management rights, as they'll have the right to protect, conserve and manage their community resources, that are the resources of forest. However, the implementation of these provisions of the act, they have faced several challenges because of many reasons. The first is implementation barriers. First of all, these legislation, it is provided or enacted to provide rights to forest dwellers, but on the other hand, politicians, they are using the provisions of this act selectively, because on one hand they try to protect the rights of forest dwelling communities, but on the other hand, these politicians, they are granting the benefits of Forest Rights Act to illegal encroachers just to ensure their political benefit. On the other hand, the forest dwelling communities, they also resist the attempts made by forest departments to undertake any development of forest areas. That's why this act has been facing implementation barriers. Further, there are many government departments, which are responsible for managing forest. For example, revenue department, forest department, as well as security forces. That's why the implementation of these acts, it also faces lack of interdepartmental cooperation. That's why especially the scheduled tribe department, it also faces lack of cooperation with respect to other government departments such as forest and home departments. Also, government in recent times have made quite a few attempts in order to digitize the process for grievance redressal of forest dwelling scheduled tribes. And in this regard, a One Mitra software was developed in the state of Madhya Pradesh. But the access of this digitization initiative, especially by forest dwelling scheduled tribes, have been not ideal, because these scheduled tribes, they do not have the amount of digital literacy or ability to access internet and their internet based services. Alternatively, these rights, they have not recognized the community rights in general, because although India's forests, they extend to many states, but only three states, that is Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, as well as Chhattisgarh, they have only, these three states, they have only recognized community rights. That's why the focus is just to provide individual rights to tribals, and it does not envisages the community rights. That's why these are the challenges that the implementation of Forest Right Act, it has faced in the recent past. Now, in this regard, let us discuss what is the ideal way forward in order to better implement this act. And the first and probably the most important suggestion is to implement the Forest Rights Act in true letter and spirit. Because as Forest Rights Act, it will lead to development of forest dwellers, but it will also help build trust between tribals on one hand and government departments on another, because cooperation between these two set of sections, it is essential to conserve and protect India's forest. Further, these forest dwelling tribes, they are less developed as compared to other communities in the country. That's why active cooperation with government will also help socio-economic development of these particular tribes. Secondly, it is also important to reform India's forest bureaucracy, because currently forest bureaucracy, it is governing these areas from a colonial mindset. So the forest bureaucracy, it has to recognize that the forest dwelling schedule tribes, they are original inhabitants of India's forest, and they have to play the role of service providers to these forest dwellers in order to alleviate their grievances. Additionally, there are few best practices that have been employed in many states in the country, which can be scaled up in a countrywide manner. The most important in this regard is the Mo Jangal Jami Yojana, which was a yojana passed by the Odisha government. Now, this particular yojana, it intends to improve the coordination between scheduled tribes and the forest bureaucracy. Thereby, it helps promote the development of scheduled tribes, and it also envisages the ideal government control over the forest resources. Further, we can also improve the technology use in order to alleviate the problems of scheduled dwellers. And in this regard, the Narmada district of Gujarat is an important example, because this particular district in Gujarat state, it implemented the participatory mapping methodology, which used geotagging of important forest resources with the use of satellite. Hence, in this regard, it protected the natural resources of the forest areas. On the other hand, it also made the government departments more accountable in order to improve the lives of the forest dwelling scheduled tribe communities. So, this was the discussion which pertained to implementation of Forest Rights Act, as it is a key area of interest, especially in the tribal dominated forest areas in the country. With this, let us move to the third article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express newspaper. Now, this op-ed, it is written by Bhaskar Chakravarti, who is a noted economist. Now, this highlights the unemployment crisis that exists in the country, because India has a huge amount of population. As India, it is expecting to have around 950 people in the working age population. So, to reap the demographic dividend of the country, it is quite natural to employ all these people in economically productive sectors of the country. So, for any developing country, in order to become developed, so it needs country's workforce to move from agricultural to manufacturing as well as service sectors, because these sectors, as compared to agricultural sector, they are more economically productive and have the potential to employ large number of people. Now, in this regard, this news article, it highlights specifically on the service sector of the country, because this service sector, it generates about 55% of country's GDP. However, on the other hand, this sector, it only employs about 30% of country's working age population. So naturally, India's answer should be not just to increase the capacity to produce jobs in the manufacturing sector, but the country should also look to scale up employment, especially in the service sector. Now, this article highlights four important suggestions. The first is that quite recently, India has developed capabilities of where many multinational companies like Amazon, Microsoft, as well as Intel, which is a semiconductor manufacturing company, they have established global capability centers in India. Now, these centers, they provide services which range from both finance and legal, and it can also include research and development services which are provided to their headquarters, which are located outside the country. Now, these global capability centers, they have the potential to provide employment that require high skilled workforce. Further, these global capability centers, when they provide services outside the country, it is also counted as exports out of India. So, not just in order to provide high skill developed employment, but this sector, it is also crucial to increase India's export. Further, India has also witnessed forming of many tech startups that cater not just emerging technologies such as AI, but also they provide software as a service to service providers located in abroad countries. Now, India, it is a growing country, hence it needs a lot of emerging technology which can be developed inside the country as well. So these tech startups, they have potential to provide not just emerging technological services, but they can also provide increasing opportunities for high skill employment to India's demographic dividend. Further, India also wants to reduce the total emission from its energy and other important sectors. And in this regard, the government of India, it has promised that India will have a 500 gigawatt of renewable energy generating capacity by the year 2030. Now, to achieve this capacity, India needs to scale up its green energy generation infrastructure. Again, this sector has a potential to provide as much as 50 million jobs by the year 2030. So, India should also look to generate jobs in the renewable energy sector as well. Further, India also has a large amount of MSMEs, that are micro, small as well as medium enterprises. Now, these enterprises, they have the capacity to absorb low skilled workforce, and this particular sector, that is MSME, it will help India employ low skilled workforce in a better manner. So, in order to create more jobs, India should first scale up its global capability center services. It should also look to improve its tech startup ecosystem, in addition to generating jobs in the renewable energy sector. Further, to provide jobs to low skilled workforce, India should also take the promotion of micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, this was the summary of the third article of the day. Now, with this, we move to the next set of articles, the first of which appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article, it reports that the Indian Institute of Science, it has developed a novel hydrogel technology to remove the microplastics from water. Now, microplastics, when dissolved in water, they have huge health or huge potential to risk the human health. So, in order to reduce the amount of microplastics from water, it is necessary to have important technologies that should not just remove microplastics from water, but should also be cheap and scalable in nature. Now, initiatives to reduce environmental pollution has been a key subject of UPSC's interest. Case in point being this recent question on biofilters in recirculating aquaculture systems. Further, the mains GS paper 3 syllabus also has a line of environmental pollution. That's why this news article is important from prelims perspective. Now let us discuss what are these hydrogels are all about. Now these hydrogels, they are jelly like material which can be either found naturally or can be synthesized in a lab. Hence, today's news article, it highlights microplastics that contains three types of various polymers and has been generated or synthesized in the lab of IISc. Further, these hydrogels, they are 3D cross-linked substances which are made with the help of fusion of a fluid which can be even water. Now these hydrogels, they have the capacity to absorb and retain large amount of waters. Hence these hydrogel, they have huge amount of or wide scale applications all across different sectors. Further, these hydrogel, they have applications in biomedical and engineering applications because they are non-toxic and non-immunogenic in nature. Hence, for tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, which are important from biomedical standpoint, these hydrogels have been employed widely. Further, these hydrogels, they can also be used to treat wastewater as well as are ensured in or used in the field of robotics. Further, these hydrogels, they have a unique property that they can respond to external stimuli such as change in pH levels, temperature, as well as moisture. That's why these are used in drug delivery applications. Further, these hydrogels, they are also used in some contact lenses because these hydrogels, they help keep moisture away from these contact lenses. Additionally, they can be added to soil, which helps these soils to retain more amount of moisture. That's by making the soil more productive in nature. Hence, with this information, let us now solve the practice question. With respect to hydrogel, consider the following statements. The first statement, it is composed of two-dimensional cross-linked networks of natural and synthetic polymers. Now, this statement is incorrect because these are 3D cross-link natural or synthetic polymers and are not two-dimensional in nature. Second statement, these hydrogel, they have low water absorption capacity. Now this again is incorrect because these hydrogels, they have high water absorption capacity, which makes them quite widely used, especially in the field of agricultural as well as biomedical use. Now the third statement, these hydrogel, they have application in tissue engineering as well as microplastic removal. Now from today's news article, you can safely say that they are used for microplastic removal, and as they are non-toxic and non-immunogenic in nature, that's why they are also used in field of tissue engineering, which is a field of biomedical application. So as only third statement is correct, thereby option A is the right answer to this practice question. Now we move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express Explain section. Now this news article, it highlights that the Ministry of Farmers and Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, it has adopted a new portal which is called CDP-SURAKSHA Portal. Now this is the snapshot of that particular portal. Now important initiatives, especially with the field of technology and in agricultural sector, these have been key area of interest for UPSC in the past. For example, in the year 2017, the question appeared on National Agricultural Marketing Scheme, which is a portal for marketing of agricultural products. Now, in this regard, let us discuss what is this CDP-SURAKSHA Portal. Now, this CDP-SURAKSHA Portal, it was brought forward by Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Now, this is a digital portal which is used to disburse subsidies to horticultural farmers under the cluster development portal, hence the name CDP here. Now farmers, they log in into this portal with the help of their mobile number, and whenever they are to procure any farm material, the farmers pay their share of subsidies. Now as soon as they pay their share of subsidies, the corresponding amount of government subsidy, it is also generated in a form of e-rupee vouchers. Now, as these vouchers, they can only be used for a particular designated use, that's why they are non-leaking in manner. Hence, these kind of vouchers, they help government reduce their subsidy burden in total. Further, these vouchers, they also enable, or they in a way force the farmers to use the amount of money only for the particular intended use. Now, hence I already highlighted that the instant disbursal of subsidies, they are done through e-rupee vouchers. Further, these vouchers, they can only be utilized by farmers after they provide the geotag link of their farm photos. Hence, these portal, they also have various features such as it helps database integration with PM Kisan scheme, has cloud-based server space for national informatics sector, in addition to providing geotagging services. Now, both public and private sector banks, they are part of this initiative, such as SBI, SDFC, ICICI, and Bank of Baroda. Now, earlier, the farmers, they used to pay full amount of money if they were to buy planting materials. So that meant the farmers had to pay more amount of money in general. But with implementation of this portal, the government is ensuring that the burden on farmers it is lessened, because the farmer they are only required to pay their fair share of subsidies, and corresponding subsidies by the government they are generated automatically in this portal. Understood? So with this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements regarding the CDP-SURAKSHA portal. The first statement, it is a digital portal for registration of complaints by the women victims of various offences. So don't go by the name Suraksha portal, as I've already highlighted it. This portal it intends to disburse subsidies to the horticultural farmers in the country and not done to protect women from various offences. So this first statement is incorrect. Now, as this particular portal was launched by Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare and not by Ministry of Child and Women Development, hence the second statement here is also incorrect. Now moving to third statement, only public sector banks are part of this initiative, which again is an incorrect statement, because both public as well as private sector banks such as ICICI as well as SDFC are part of this initiative, hence the third statement is also incorrect. So how many of the above given statement is or are correct? The option to this practice question or the answer is option D, as none of the options are correct. Now with this we move to next article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express explained section again. Now this article it highlights that Mount Etna, which is located in Italy, it has a particular kind of volcano which emits volcanic vortex rings such as these. Now these particular perfect shape of rings, they are an important development as far as prelims are concerned, because first of all volcanism and the various geographical locations where volcanic activities are happening, this have been asked by UPSC before, especially in the prelims of the year 2018. So you can see this is also important from GS paper 1 syllabus, because the syllabus highlights important geophysical phenomena such as volcanic activity. Now this Mount Etna, it is located in Sicily, which is an island of the country Italy. Now this Sicily, it is located in the Mediterranean Sea, which you can see this is the island of Sicily and it is located in the Mediterranean Sea. Now this island, it has a volcanic mountain which is Mount Etna, which produces or emits vortex rings, as these rings they occur when gas is rapidly released through the vent in the volcano's crater. Now the perfect round shape of these rings, they are done through circular vent opening. Now the cold atmosphere which is above a hot volcano, it causes the water which is emitted from these volcanoes to condense, thereby making these rings much more visible in nature. Now what is the explanation of the formation of these rings? Now these rings they are formed only when the gas bubbles they are exploded from a narrow conduit, which you can see from this particular graph. As naturally whenever there is no conduit in a volcano, it leads to amount or release of normal amount of smoke. Whereas on the other hand, when the conduit it becomes narrow, it leads to emission of perfectly circular volcanic vortex rings. Now these volcano rings, these are emitted from various volcanoes located all across the world, be it Alaska in the US or New Zealand or Venezuela. But the amount of frequency of these vortex rings, it is highest in the Mount Etna. Further, the presence of these rings, it does not necessarily indicate that the volcano is about to erupt. Understood? So in this regard, let us now consider the practice question. Consider the following statements. Mount Etna, it is the largest dormant volcano in Europe. Now, although the Mount Etna is the largest volcano in Europe. However, it is not dormant, rather it is active in nature, which you can understand as this volcano, it emits vortex rings as well as volcanoes also. Now the second statement, it is located on the largest island in the Atlantic Ocean, which again is an incorrect statement because I have already highlighted the island of Sicily. It is located in Mediterranean Sea and not Atlantic Ocean. So the second statement also is incorrect. Now moving to the third statement, the recent rings observed over Mount Etna, they can be attributed to circular vent opening of its crater, which is a correct statement because the perfect shape of these rings can be attributed to the circular vent opening of the volcano. As only third statement is correct, hence option A is the right answer to this model question. Now we move to the last article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Business Line newspaper. Now this news article, it highlights various important achievements of the founding father of India's constitution, that was Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Now important personalities in India's modern Indian history, it is mentioned in the GS paper 1 syllabus. Further, questions related to important social development or socio-economic development of the vulnerable section of population has been asked by UPSC before in the year 2020 as well, where you can see questions related to Indian history before independence was asked or was the subject of this question. So in this regard, let us now go through the important achievements or the important organizations which was formed by Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, he was the part of Bombay's Presidency Committee, which participated or worked with the Simon Commission. Further, he also entered the Bombay Legislative Council, first as a nominated member, but after that he also became the elected member of Bombay's Legislative Council. So he was both the nominated and after that he also was the elected member of the Bombay Legislative Council. Further, Dr. Ambedkar, he also established the Bahishkrit Hitkarni Sabha, which worked towards promotion and socio-economic development of the Dalits of India. Further, Dr. Ambedkar, he also participated in the Mahat Satyagraha, which ensured the provision of civic rights to Dalit. Because in this Satyagraha, Dr. Ambedkar made sure to drink water from a public well, which was before prohibited for the members of Dalit community. So in a way, he broke both the particular convention and also made sure to grant civic rights to the population of Dalits. Further, he also participated in a Satyagraha which involved entry to Kalaram temple in the Nashik, which was part of Bombay's presidency. Now this particular Satyagraha established the right of the untouchables, that was Dalit, to enter the religious places. Further, he also published magazines such as Mook Nayak, Bahishkrit Bharat as well as Equality Janta. Alternatively, he also advocated for separate electorates for depressed classes, as he felt that it was needed to separate from other parts of India's population. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, he founded a political party which was called Independent Labour Party, and it later formed or transformed into Scheduled Caste Federation in the year 1936. Also, Dr. Ambedkar, he was one of the 8 Indians who was nominated to Viceroy's Defence of India Council in the year 1941. Now, with this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements with reference to Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Now, the first statement, he coined the slogan, no religion, no caste, and no God for mankind. Now, let me tell you, this statement is incorrect because this statement, it was coined by a disciple of Sri Narayana Guru in Kerala, that was Sahadran Ayappan. Now, on one hand, Sri Narayana Guru, he coined one religion, one caste and one God for mankind. But his disciple, that was Sadran Ayappan, he coined the word that was no religion, no caste, as well as no God for mankind. So the first statement is incorrect. Moving to second statement, the Kalaram temple entry movement was led by Dr. Ambedkar in Bombay, which is a correct statement, as you can see in this particular paragraph. Understood. So let us now solve the third statement. Now, All India Untouchability League, it was founded by Dr. Ambedkar, which is an incorrect statement because this All India Anti-Untouchability League, it was formed in the year 1932 after Mahatma Gandhi undertook hunger strike against untouchability in the India. So this was enacted by Mahatma Gandhi and not Dr. Ambedkar. Whereas on the other hand, Dr. Ambedkar was responsible for All India Scheduled Caste Federation. Understood? And not Untouchability League. Now this question, it asks us that how many statements given above is or are incorrect. Please pay close attention to this word, that is, it asks us incorrect statements. Now as statement 1 and statement 3 was incorrect, hence option B was the right answer. So with this, I conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified. We'll meet you again tomorrow at 6 p.m. sharp. And until then, I bid you a very good night.